Welcome everyone to the panel discussion on Fireside Chat, an exploration of Jamaica's shared services. Now, this is part of the Explore Do Business in Jamaica Investment Conference. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Peter Ryan. I'm a BPO and CX research analyst. I'm a strategic advisor and a thought leader at Ryan Strategic Advisory. I've got roughly 2 decades of experience, and Ryan Strategic Advisory supports outsourcing operators, technology providers, industry associations, and economic development agencies. My expertise spans several strategic topics that include vertical market penetration and service delivery to best practices in offshoring, tech development, and competitive positioning. Now, I'm very fortunate to be joined on this fireside chat by a couple of very experienced individuals who are going to bring a lot of insight in terms of the topic today. The individuals who are joining me specifically are Jodi-Ann Birch, who has spent the last 12 years working with operations and project management with global teams across the Caribbean, the United States, Europe, and Asia. She's worked in a number of roles spanning project and program management, solution design, business development, new business transition and migrations, offshoring, continuous improvement and compliance. Now, she currently works as the Senior Manager for Growth Strategy and Advisory Services at KPMG-Jamaica, Extended Support Services. We're also very lucky to include in our discussion today, Hodo. Now, Bo works in the global shared services and finance transformation realm with over 20 years experience in procure to pay, quote to cash, record to report, and continuous business process improvement. She spent roughly a decade in Europe implementing shared services for end-to-end business processes and defining the different shared service models to suit different business and industry needs and trends. Bo is currently a director at ABM Global. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 industry experts engaging with us today, and we're very, very fortunate to be able to put this in the context of shared services as it relates to how they have been amended or impacted by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. That's something that's pushed shared services professionals to pivot their operational strategies while leveraging the many benefits of having such a model in place during a time of crisis. Our session today is going to highlight the shared services activities in Jamaica in the context of digitization, talent management, and the future of work. Ladies, welcome to our fireside chat. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be
Wonderful.
here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. And I think, at least considering the temperature it is in Montreal, Canada today, a fire would be quite nice. So we could be doing this in a fireside setting, but we are virtual. So we will just sort of imagine a fire, and we'll just imagine perhaps all sharing not just some ideas, but also some coffee or whatever beverages that you would be partaking in during a conference, whether live or online. So I'd like to start perhaps, Jodi-Ann, with yourself. I'd love to get your thoughts about your experience in Jamaica and what you see as some of the advantages that Jamaica brings to the table as a destination for shared services delivery.
No problem, Ryan. So there are several there are other nearshore operations in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, and they tend to use the term nearshore in that they are a nearshore center. Jamaica happens to be maybe the only true nearshore operations in the entire Caribbean and even Latin America. One of the first things is really our geographic location and proximity to US. I usually tell my clients it's less than a 2-hour flight from Miami to Montego Bay. You are also looking at the fact that we have the largest Caribbean-speaking population, largest English-speaking population in the Caribbean, and we have a very strong affinity and cultural affinity to the UK and to the US. Our labor market is very skilled, and we have a very competitive labor market. And in the last I would say in the last decade, there has been a lot of focus on this industry and a great prioritization by our government. So our infrastructure, a lot of work has gone into our infrastructure, which happens to be even better than Costa Rica and Uruguay, which are other successful locations in the BPO industry or nearshore industry. And the government has really spent a lot of investment or spent a lot of money investing in the region. So we're looking at centers that are being purpose built for the industry, a lot of focus on education and certification for or labor market in response to the needs of the industry. And those are just some of the things that make Jamaica the ideal nearshore location.
You know, it's interesting because I've been to Jamaica several times, and one of the things that you mentioned that really hit home with me was the government's emphasis on investing in infrastructure. And I don't think that anybody should put that to the side. I think that that's something that's a true advantage for the country. And when I think a little bit about, you know, the first trip that I made to Jamaica back perhaps in 2009, 2010, relative to my last trip, which was right before the pandemic hit, the difference to the naked eye was very clear in terms of the quality of the roads, in terms of the quality of the transportation network, the quality of the connectivity, and so forth. Yet I unfortunately find that when you talk with individuals, perhaps in Canada where I am, or perhaps in the USA, for those who have a passing interest in the nearshore or in Jamaica, they would still feel that it would be better to take some of the more sophisticated shared services elements and perform them onshore, perform them domestically. So, Jodi-Ann, sticking with you for a second here, how difficult was it for you to convince the stakeholders in the United States that perhaps Jamaica was the right place to move some of these more higher value add elements to be performed from Jamaica?
I'm not going to be sugarcoated. Initially, it was difficult, and it was for some of the reasons that you typically mention. We are known for being the hub for voice. Initially, you would not think of Jamaica as a shared services center for skilled services. And current CARICOM chairman, Mr. Honda, and his team really did a good pitch to the team, to the KPMG-US team, highlighting some of the advantages that I just mentioned. And we started with a pilot. You know, we had to really showcase how good we were as a destination, and we started with a pilot. Once we got the pilot, KPMG-JESS really focused on, I would say, 4 critical areas. The first being service quality and performance, right? And then continuous improvement and collaboration. We had to show religiously that we were the partner of choice, right? Or metrics. And it goes beyond even metrics, because you have contractual metrics, and then you have the unspoken expectation of being a partner, not just a vendor, being a partner to the US. And then we started looking at our talent. Once they saw what we could do, we started having discussions saying, all right, when let's try something a little bit more advanced. Let's look at maybe 2 pilots with back-end support. We started looking at application and how can we support additional services that you have. We were very proactive in the discussions that we were having with our US team. And rather than waiting on them to come to us with their problems, we would present ideas to them. You know, this is what our market is looking like. So this is the kind of skill sets that we have. How can we be of service to you, given that we've shown that we've been really good partners, and we've always been very agile. That's something I pride KPMG-JESS on. We've been a very agile company, even in our response to COVID, and that started very early. We're very responsive to our customer needs. We're very customer focused and very customer oriented, and we're very agile. So after a while, it became a lot easier for them to kind of let down a little bit of the guards. We had to overcome some obvious restrictions with technology and what can be offshored. But then once you get that initial confidence from your team and consistent performance, and always making sure that you are actually showing yourself as a partner of choice, because we don't consider ourselves as a vendor to KPMG US. We are indeed their partners.
Okay, that's really good insight, and thank you very much for that. Now, Bo, I'm going to shift the discussion over to you for a few minutes, because I really think that what you have been able to experience and bring to the table from a shared services perspective will provide a lot of flavor to our chat today. And One of the things that I think Jodi-Ann touched on that really hit home with me is the expanse to which shared services can be considered. It takes into account a whole variety of different functions. And from the standpoint of ABM and your approach to shared services, what would that encompass? What would that range include if we were looking at a menu of different options that you'd be able to bring to the table?
Sure. So currently, ABM, we service different industries. So we're in the aviation space, education, we're in technology and manufacturing, and building an industry, right? So pretty much we're looking more at your finance functions. Where do you have a lot of repetitive tasks and processes so dispersed across the organization? And you begin to look for synergies. And I think one of the strategies is first looking at an end-to-end approach. So I'll give an example: procure to pay. Instead of having procurement isolated from your accounts payable and from disbursements, you look at the whole spectrum and how do you standardize? So as a company, what we're trying to do is look at transformation, and you need to transform your processes. And the only way to get that done is by having an end-to-end process defined and looking at those processes that can be centralized and those that will stay in the field so they can push more revenue versus, dealing with all the task of handling all the mundane tasks that you can either do, with automation or have leverage your headcount and have a few people doing the same tasks that are scalable. And then another thing too that you need to look at is stabilization. And that is one of the hardest things, right? When you're setting up your shared services, you're trying to centralize, which is great. You're lifting and shifting, and you have different people doing the same task in one location, or you can have different locations and still have people that are affiliated with the shared service center still doing the same thing. And you look at optimization, which is one of the hardest to get to because it takes in a lot of technology and really, really a lot of rationalization of the processes. And as a global company, these are one of the things we're currently working on. We're using a tech roadmap at the same time too. We're looking at synergies in our processes and trying to define our end-to-end.
Well, that's great. And you hit home on something that really resonates with me, because a lot of the research I'm doing currently for my clients, whether it's individual companies in the outsourcing community or organizations that perhaps want to operate their own shared services operations or centers, relates to something that I think you encapsulated quite nicely: the fact that you can have one center that's part of a broader network, that's part of a broader global network that can provide a whole series of different elements. And, Bo, staying on that topic, in your view, where does Jamaica fit in regards to this series of global options that do exist right now from a shared services delivery standpoint?
I mean, looking at Jamaica, and I'll say the same thing again, it's less than 2.5, 3 hours from the US. I can speak for sitting in Houston, and then they speak English is the common language in the country, and you have a high skill set, especially in the finance function. And if you look at the future work of shared services, right? The way we're going to be working is changing. So you also want to look at being more dynamic and having a workforce that is evolving, and also not only looking at cost, but looking at the returns on the investment. And you look at Jamaica is a favorable place in terms of anytime we set up a shared services. I did this in the past where we set up a shared services in the Philippines, for instance. Besides just going there and having meetings with your business partners, it must be a destination that is favorable, is safe. You go in there, you still feel you're not away from home. You're still being able to plug into the technology, and you're able to see yourself being replicated there, meaning you have an extension of your team sitting in another country, speaking the same language on the same time zone, and then it's just a flight away.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't think anyone should underestimate that whole element of nearshore and the whole element of being close to where the source market is located. Every year I do a survey of enterprises to try and find out what some of their key facets are when it comes to the outsourcing or shared services world. Something that really hit home for me the last couple of years is the extent to which organizations are prioritizing locations in which it'll be less than a 6-hour flight. And that's so important. Let's be perfectly honest. As it stands right now, I think the days of executives from the United States or Canada getting on a 15-hour flight to India or a 17-hour flight to South Africa or even 24 hours to the Philippines are probably going to go the way of the buggy whip. And it's completely understandable. But, I think from the standpoint, Jodi-Ann, a little bit about KPMG and the extent to which KPMG is going to continue to leverage Jamaica, taking into account the proximity and, as yourself and Bo mentioned, the outstanding native language skills that it brings to the table. With, I might add, too, a superb level of education based on what I've seen on my trips to Jamaica and the interactions I've had with Jamaican organizations. What's next for KPMG when it comes to its Jamaican shared services strategy?
Right. So in looking at the U.S. market, even with our client that we have right now, we do have certain services that we would very much like to expand into. We're starting to add very interesting roles. So project management as a service that was offshore, something that you would not have seen in the past. You start looking at technical support, and technical support that goes beyond help desk or ticketing system, but actual technical support, backend support. You're looking at configuration support. You start looking at services that are higher value, and that's where we are looking to go. So we're looking at two-pronged approach, looking at services that are really more technical, different kind of skill sets that we can extend. But at the same time, we do have areas with or current clients with our current operations that we can get greater market share, or we can get more services. So we do have quite a way that we can go with our current with the US clients. And then there are other markets that we can look at that I would say would be a long-term strategy for us, but it is an option because we are pretty far from being saturated with the US market.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one because I think a little bit about some of those other markets that potentially Jamaica could service. And one of the exciting things I've been seeing recently in the CX domain is the number of organizations that are looking to try and leverage Jamaica as an outsourcing or shared services point for the United Kingdom. Let's be frank, there's obviously the common language. I think a lot of the common legal processes and business processes exist between the two countries. Equally speaking, direct flights between the UK and Jamaica up until the pandemic were on a daily basis to both Montego Bay and to Kingston, notwithstanding that the UK and Jamaica both drive on the same side of the road, but that's just an attempt at humor on my part.
And that's something that we've seen as well. Through our work with our US clients, we do have very direct connection because these teams are really global teams. So we are speaking to persons in the UK and Canada, and we're starting to hear conversations where someone said, wow, Jamaica is doing very well for KPMG US. Can we tap into it? So even though we may not be directly supporting these teams, we do give support by way of the global approach that KPMG has. And these are markets. And even you did mention UX, UI design. That is an area that we are focusing heavily on, something that we would not look at in the past. So again, we do have these skill sets and these niches that we can go into.
Okay, excellent. So, Bo, let me ask you, from my vantage point, I've been picking up a lot of interest these days in shared services destinations that are not necessarily the least expensive, but the ones that bring the best value. So certainly that might be a little less expensive than the United States or Canada or the UK, but equally ones that have a great deal when it comes of when we're looking at talent or skill sets or different understanding of business functions. Is this something, Bo, that you're picking up as well in terms of the requirements of businesses that they would like to look at a location in which talent and skills availability is going to effectively balance or even be more important than price?
All right. So I think one of the first things I would go back to look at some of the things that we are strong on in terms of competitive advantage, right? If you're looking at infrastructure, you would want to have a conversation on just what applications, what systems, what is the IT posture of the organization. And you will find that it's very similar, very strong across the industry. So that would be a consideration when you're looking at nearshore, how supported are my applications, how supported are my systems. You kind of want to have a conversation on talent. What would be your strategy to retain talent, to keep talent? What is the profile? What are the skill sets that you're looking at? And you will definitely hear if you can have conversations with teams that are already there, I find that conversations help. So it's easier for me to show you how good our talent is by having a conversation than it is for me to tell you how good or talent is. You kind of want to have some conversations and where this company is going. What are some of the initiatives that they're looking at, both from a people perspective, from an IT perspective, because then you're going to find a match. And again, it's about finding that partnership. You're looking for more than just a client. You're looking for more than just a vendor. Do you have that cultural cohesion between your organizations?
Great. Thank you so much, Jodi-Ann. Bo, the floor is yours. What would some of the key success factors that a potential shared services investor should be looking for in Jamaica or any other destination for that matter in the world?
I think the key thing is you want strong operating models and greater automation, which will make you better prepared for today's challenges and opportunities. And also one of the key things is also to look at the evolution from world-class to digital world-class, because that is where we're headed to. And as we even take a step further, virtual shared services for future work is going to become more eminent in the coming years. And I see Jamaica or any other country that will be favorable should already have that digitization, a good tech roadmap, and being able to show the clients that they can add a lot of value to their end-to-end processes, and also having a robust business continuity plan. Because looking at climate changes and a lot of the things we see, you want to be able to have a backup plan, have your BPO in a country that has good climate, is easily accessible, and also has a stable government, and also has favorable tax covens, which is key.
And you raised a really interesting topic there in terms of the stability, and not to point any fingers, but let's be perfectly frank. I think what we've seen in a number of different locations the past few months, most notably South Africa, points to the issue around stability and the confidence an individual organization can have housing their facilities and employing people in a spot that's going to be relatively impervious to societal disruptions, let alone potential disruptions when it comes to natural disasters or extreme weather. But ladies, it's been an absolutely fascinating discussion, and I can't thank you each enough for taking some time out of your very busy schedules to talk shared services and to talk Jamaica today. It's an absolute pleasure to have had you on the Fireside Chat, and we look forward to being able to do this live, hopefully sooner rather than later.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, and looking for more success, and hopefully Jamaica becomes the next spot for the next gen of shared services.
It definitely will.
Great. Excellent. Fingers crossed.
All right. Cheers.